Welcome back. Secretary Markwayne Mullin sat down for an exclusive interview with CBS News after nearly 2 months at the helm of the Department of Homeland Security. In this conversation, he told our Nicole Sganga ICE won't be at this summer's FIFA World Cup to, quote, round up non-citizens, end quote. But Mullin said arrests by ICE agents aren't off the table.
We're not there that we're going to be enforcing mass immigration, but we're there to enforce the law. So
Mr.
if we
Secretary,
find a felon or we find someone doing customs,
if
we're going
you
to go after them.
find a criminal, you will arrest them. But
Yes.
the mission at the World Cup is not immigration enforcement.
We're not there. Well, ICE always says immigration enforcement. We're always going to do that. But we're not there for solely that purpose. We're in there to do our job. Immigration, custom enforcement.
CBS News Homeland Security correspondent Nicole Sganga joins us now from our D.C. bureau with more on this. Nicole, good morning. Share more of what the Secretary told you about ICE as a whole. This organization is facing so much criticism this year.
Yeah, Errol, good morning. It's interesting. We actually did this interview at ICE headquarters, and the Secretary told me his number 1 priority for ICE is to restore pride in the organization. He pointed to poor morale. And we know that the reconciliation process is ongoing, that for a while the Department of Homeland Security had been shut down over disputes about some of the tactics used by ICE and CBP. Thought it was really interesting. The Secretary told me that both him and Tom Homan had sat down with lawmakers and were willing to make 9 different concessions about how immigration enforcement is carried out in this country, but ultimately lawmakers did not want to vote on it, which is why we're moving into reconciliation. We'll, of course, check with Democratic lawmakers on that. But he also spoke about the need to expand detention within ICE without using the warehouse model that was so popular under Secretary Noem and is now being scrutinized by the Inspector General of DHS. He said instead there will be a pivot to using local jails and prisons, to using state and local facilities that perhaps have defaulted on grants or loans that can be stood up quickly. Dave Venturilla is the new acting director of ICE. I asked the Secretary, is he a temporary placeholder or a permanent I guess a permanent nominee? He said he's temporary. They will be looking for that permanent leader. Last thing, Errol, I thought was really interesting. Walking around ICE headquarters, there was a big display called the Faces of ICE, and there were these massive portraits throughout ICE headquarters of all of the different officers and agents, sort of a show about the change of leadership amid all of the scrutiny of wearing masks that we saw so many of these faces of the men and women of ICE just around the facility.
And ICE agents not wearing masks was a big ask of Democrats, which held up the government and its funding for so long. You mentioned warehouse detentions. What else did he tell you about Alligator Alcatraz? We had reported yesterday it may potentially close because it's so expensive to run.
Yeah, this soft-sided facility in Florida, I asked him whether or not it was going to close. Take a listen to what he had to say.
We do understand there's vulnerabilities there. It's a soft-sided facility. Right now, we have fires that are within 20 miles of it. We all know that Florida is pretty susceptible to hurricanes. So I could see where, we may run into a place where we may have to, but we have not made any announcement.
Errol, evacuation plans, but not closure plans. And the Secretary also told us that Florida is the model when it comes to disaster relief, that governors can expect FEMA to show up on the worst day ahead of hurricane season, but that the states will have to take on more of the responsibility following natural disasters. Errol?
Really interesting notes coming out of that interview. Nicole, thanks so much.